About 4.5 billion years ago, space was just chaos. Dust, gas, and fire flying everywhere around this young star we now call the Sun. Out of all that madness, boom, collision, a little planet started to form. That was Earth, still super young, hot as heck, and totally wild. We're talking oceans of straight-up lava, volcanoes popping off, meteors raining down like fireworks. Yeah, it was no place for life, just pure chaos. But over time, things started to chill, literally. The air cooled, the rain started to fall, and the first oceans began to take shape. And right there, in those deep, stormy waters, something amazing happened. Life. Tiny, simple, but powerful. The very first spark that would kick off everything we know today. Billions of years back, we're talking 3.8 billion. The Earth was just getting started. And guess what showed up? Tiny little dudes, the first microbes. They were super simple, single-celled life forms. But man, they had the magic code. They could grow, reproduce, and adapt. The three things that basically define life. Time rolled on, and some of these tiny cells figured out a total game changer: photosynthesis. They started catching sunlight and turning it into energy. That move, it was huge. Because when they did that, they started pumping out oxygen, and that one change flipped Earth's whole atmosphere. The air we breathe today? Yeah, it started with those microscopic OGs, working the night shift at the bottom of the ocean. They laid the foundation for everything that came after: plants, animals, and eventually us. Man, Earth's been doing its thing for billions of years, just experimenting, evolving, trying out new ideas. First came the simple stuff: jellyfish floating around, fish cruising the oceans, bugs buzzing, and reptiles ruling the land. Then, boom, around 250 million years ago, the world hit the age of the dinosaurs. And yeah, these dudes were straight up the kings of the planet. Massive, wild-looking, and everywhere you turned, from the skies to the seas. For like 160 million years, they owned it. Until the ultimate plot twist. Out of nowhere, a monster asteroid slammed into Earth, hard. The skies went dark, the ground shook, and just like that, the Dino dynasty was done. It was total game over for the giants. But nature doesn't quit. Out of that chaos came a new crew, small, warm-blooded survivors called mammals. They were quick, clever, and hungry for a shot at the spotlight. And trust me, that's where our story really kicks off. After the dinosaurs checked out, mammals took over the planet, and man, they thrived. Some of them started hanging out in trees, getting sharper vision, quicker hands, and way more curious minds. These were the primates, the OG ancestors of monkeys, apes, and eventually, us. Fast forward a few million years, about 7 million, give or take. Deep in Africa, something wild happened. An ape-like creature took a stand. Literally. It started walking on two legs, checking out the world from a whole new angle. That simple move? Total game changer. This was the first step on the road to being human. Scientists call this bunch the hominins, the crew that's more related to us than to chimps. They weren't humans yet, but they were definitely heading our way. Just think, this is where our story really starts. After the dinosaurs checked out, mammals took over the planet, and man, they thrived. Some of them started hanging out in trees, getting sharper vision, quicker hands, and way more curious minds. These were the primates, the OG ancestors of monkeys, apes, and eventually, us. Fast forward a few million years, about 7 million, give or take. Deep in Africa, something wild happened. An ape-like creature took a stand. Literally. It started walking on two legs, checking out the world from a whole new angle. That simple move? Total game changer. This was the first step on the road to being human. Scientists call this bunch the hominins, the crew that's more related to us than to chimps. They weren't humans yet, but they were definitely heading our way. Just think, this is where our story really starts. So check this out. Way back, like 7 million years ago, one of the first known human ancestors showed up in Africa. Scientists call him Sahelanthropus cadensis. Yeah, it's a mouthful. He lived in what's now Chad, rocking a small brain but a surprisingly human-looking face. You could say he was our first distant cousin who kinda looked the part. Fast forward a few million years, and along comes Australopithecus afarensis, better known as Lucy. She's famous because her fossil told us something wild. She could walk upright on two legs, but still climb trees like a pro. Lucy was the real deal, living out on the African plains, probably in small groups, using sticks and stones, surviving tough conditions, and taking one giant step toward becoming human. She wasn't us yet, but she was getting close. So, picture this. It's about 2.5 million years ago. A whole new kind of creature steps onto the scene. Homo habilis, the handyman. For the first time, brains start to matter more than brawn. This guy figures out how to chip rocks into sharp tools, real game changers. With those tools, he can slice meat, crack bones, and keep his tribe safe. Intelligence just became the ultimate survival hack. Fast forward a few 100,000 years, and here comes Homo erectus, taller, stronger, sharper. And these folks? They take things to the next level. They learn to control fire, the single biggest upgrade in human history. Fire means warmth on cold nights, safety from predators, and cooked food that feeds the brain. That spark didn't just light up the dark. It lit the path to what we'd one day call humanity. So check this out. Homo erectus was the first real explorer of the human world. These folks didn't just stick around in Africa. They packed up and hit the road, spreading across Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. Tough conditions? Didn't matter. They learned to handle everything. Freezing winds on icy plains, thick jungles, dry deserts, you name it. They hunted mammoths, built shelters, and figured out how to make fire their best friend. Over time, other human types showed up. Homo heidelbergensis, Neanderthals, even the tiny Homo floresiensis, also called the Hobbit. Each had their own look, their own skills, and their own story. But here's the wild part. No matter where they ended up, they all came from the same place, Africa. That's the original homeland, the true starting line of the entire human race. About 300,000 years ago, something incredible went down in Africa. A brand new species showed up. Homo sapiens, the wise ones. And guess what? That's us. They looked just like modern humans, but it wasn't just about looks. They could think, really think. They talked, shared ideas, planned hunts, and worked together like never before. Their brains were bigger, sharper, and full of imagination. These early people weren't just surviving. They were creating. They painted wild stories on cave walls, made necklaces from bones and shells, and even buried their loved ones with care and respect. That's when emotion, art, and meaning really started to shape our world. For the first time, humans weren't just living day to day, they were dreaming about tomorrow. Then came what we call the cognitive revolution, the moment humans leveled up. They started dreaming about things that didn't even exist yet. Around the fire, they swapped stories, made up legends, and passed down life hacks from one generation to the next. That flickering firelight. Yeah, that was their classroom. And language, that was their biggest flex. They didn't just survive anymore. They created. They started crafting tools that actually made sense for what they needed. Sharp spears for hunting, fine needles for sewing hides, even boats to chase new horizons. Imagination became their superpower. Humans learned to think ahead, to build, to dream, and that changed everything. The world wasn't just a place to live in anymore. It was a place to shape. And soon, they were ready for the next big adventure, spreading out across the planet. So check this out. Humans didn't just chill in Africa forever. Nah, our ancestors were born explorers. They packed up, followed the herds, and started walking across deserts, over crazy tall mountains, even through frozen wastelands. No maps, no GPS, just instincts and guts. By around 50,000 years ago, they'd hit Asia and Australia. 10,000 years later, they rolled into Europe, and boom, they met the Neanderthals. These dudes were tough, smart, and built like tanks. But instead of always fighting, humans and Neanderthals actually vibed for a while, traded tools, maybe shared stories, and yeah, even hooked up. That mix, it never really faded. Turns out, a tiny bit of Neanderthal DNA is still chilling inside every one of us today. A reminder that way back in the day, humanity wasn't one tribe. It was a whole wild family spread across the planet. Yo, about 12,000 years ago, humans pulled off something wild. Instead of chasing food all day, they figured out how to grow it. Yeah, they started planting seeds, taming animals, and chilling in one spot for a change. Next thing you know, boom, little villages start popping up all over. Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, down by the Nile. No more living out of caves or always being on the move. People had farms, families, and actual free time. And with that extra time, they started thinking bigger, building stuff, dreaming up new ideas. Agriculture didn't just fill bellies, it flipped the whole human game. We went from surviving day to day to straight up building civilization.